Spring 2009 on TSN is brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.
Introducing the Mitsubishi Concept RA.
One of the biggest days at any auto show is the unveiling of concept cars. In fact, in Detroit, they put aside an entire day just for the concepts. Now, there was a time when a concept stayed just that, but things began to change, and I think it was Chrysler with the Prowler when it was first introduced as a concept and then very quickly turned into reality. Now, concepts are usually a glimpse into the future, but then they started looking back, General Motors with the Camaro, and in 2006, Chrysler introduced the Dodge Challenger concept. 2 years later, Graham had it on the test pad. Well, this week we're in New York City. Now, it may seem like an odd place to be driving a car like the Challenger, but for Chrysler, it feels this is the perfect setting to introduce the 2009 Dodge Challenger, a vehicle it likes to call the Big Apple in the Dodge lineup.
Well, it's all about passion. You know, it's amazing the consumers that came to us with the passion to build the car. They said quite clearly, just build this car and we will buy it. They couldn't wait to fulfill their childhood dreams, and they're just so happy that we did build it.
You see that thing going? Did you see that?
2008 started off with the SRT8 500, the limited edition, really the exclusive collector's car. And we started with the vehicle that was exactly what the enthusiasts were asking for, the 425 horsepower performance vehicle. And now we've expanded the lineup for the Canadian market for 2009. So now we've got the full lineup. We've got the SE and SXT and RT. You know, now the nice thing is we've got all that passion, but it's available to a lot more people.
You know, the folks at Chrysler like to say that you feel like a celebrity when you're driving this new Challenger. Well, I don't know about that, but I will tell you that everybody here on Motoring, we've never seen such reaction to one vehicle in a long, long time. And of course, that's because of the design. But believe me, the design is the only thing retro about this vehicle.
It's not necessarily a perfect redo of the vehicle in the sense that we're not trying to redo the 1970 Challenger. We're trying to change the Challenger in such a way that you remember all the good things about the old Challenger with all the benefits of today's technology. Some of the things that we look for as a new thing were things like keyless go, things like ESP, ABS. On the SRT product, we actually have standard ESP and traction control on the car. The SRT8 powertrain is a 6.1 liter pushrod style engine. It actually has oil squirters on it as well. So again, you know, we've taken some old technology, refined it, pushed it beyond. It actually makes more horsepower per cubic inch than the old Hemi did. This car actually gets 22 miles per gallon on the highway with the manual transmission 6-speed.
So for those who've never done this, tell us what goes on here. What are you going to do?
Well, basically, you have a manual transmission. It's a bit harder to do. You have to basically rev the engine up to about 4,000 RPM, dump the clutch to break the rear tires free, then you got to quickly get your left foot onto the brake to keep the car from rolling too far forward. And once you get the right balance of throttle and brake, the car will stay pretty much there, and you'll generate a lot of smoke and a little less rubber.
But don't try this at home.
Yeah, well, unless it's with your dad's car, that might work.
Okay. Whoa, not bad. Can't see anything out there.
We're geeked beyond belief to be able to show this car to people, and I hope that it raises a lot of nostalgic feelings in customers that used to drive the original Challenger. That's the intent here.
I mean, they're kind of taking a last stab at these high-performance, go-fast cars that, you know, I mean, I drove a car like this in the 70s to high school, and, you know, I think people like me are coming to the end of the line as buyers of these kinds of cars. So we may see the last of these cars run their course for the rest of this decade.
What do you think of the vehicle?
You know, it's so easy to drive. I mean, I've got 425 horsepower under my right foot here, and I really feel like I'm just driving around, you know, Manhattan. The power comes on seamlessly, although the sound, well, it's great.
I firmly believe that a vehicle does one of two things. It fulfills a need or makes you feel good, and this car does both. It absolutely makes you feel good. You step on the right foot and it just makes you smile. We're not afraid of the competition. In fact, we're having a little bit of fun with it. We'll throw it up against Mustang in the future, Camaro any day. We're very proud of what our new Dodge Challenger will do against any of the competition.
I woke up the other morning and it was 2005 all over again. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
If you Google Avant, you'll find many different reasons as to what it means. One of them, well, it was the singer that was first signed to Magic Johnson's record labels, if you can believe that. Only in Audi's world does it mean station wagon. On this edition of Test Drive, the all-new Audi A4 Avant. The first thing that impresses with the new A4 Avant is that it has a style all its own. So many wagons look so hearse-like it gives the breed a bad name. Paint them black and, well, the picture's complete. Up front, it's the A4's under-headlight wave of LEDs that form the daytime running lights that define the face. Around at the back, the roof adopts a downward arc, but it still leaves a large opening that will accommodate a sizable box. The back end of this Audi has been very well thought through. With the seats up, you get about 17 cubic feet of cargo space, and if you fold the seats down, 50.5 cubic feet. There's also a privacy cover and the tie downs needed to keep the load secure. The other thing I really like, simple thing, the rear wash wiper actually washes and wipes almost the entire screen. Then you get to these things. This thing is a $53,000 car, and yet the tailpipes look like they fell off the back of a used Hyundai. For goodness sakes, where are the chrome finishes? Let me guess, on the option list along with the metallic paint. The Avant comes with Audi's new 2-litre turbocharged 4. In terms of its work ethic and flexibility, it's a paragon of virtue. Yes, the 211 horsepower could be described as being a little light. However, the fact that 258 pounds-feet of torque turns up for work at just 1500 RPM transforms it into a tactile mill. Tromp the gas and the A4 puts 100k on the clock in 6.9 seconds. The mid-range is the equal of the initial urgency, as passing a slower vehicle is accomplished in a snap, just under 5 seconds to do the 80 to 120 discipline. The power is relayed to the road through a 6-speed Tiptronic Manumatic. It is both smooth on the way up and it rev matches on the way down. Over the years, Audis have built a reputation for having wonderful interiors, and this A4, well, it just reinforces the whole notion. Very nice materials, and it's very logically laid out. There are, however, two options you might want to consider. The first one, a very good navigation system. The second one is the tech package. Now, this thing really does do some good things for the car. First of all, an advanced key with a push-button start. You also get active headlights, which really do help at night. And finally, side assist. Now, if a car sneaks up on the inside or the outside of you, there are 4 LEDs in the mirror that warn you that the car is in your potential blind spot. It really does make driving this car that much easier. The Avant's Quattro all-wheel drive system now splits the power 60-40 front to rear. This makes the estate feel more like a rear drive car. The advantage being that understeer is no longer the A4's defining dynamic trait. Push too hard and you will encounter understeer. However, it's now much easier to control the tendency than before. All cars should be this good at putting the power to the pavement. The brakes mirror this work ethic, bringing short 41-metre stops from 100 kilometres an hour. If you get relegated to the rear seat, what was once a very cozy spot is now very spacious, and it boils down to two important things. First of all, this oversized panoramic sunroof really does open up the cabin. The other thing, the wheelbase was stretched by 160 millimeters. That means you've now got plenty of legroom, plenty of headroom, and a very comfortable back seat. The handling more than equals the driving experience. Throw the Avant into a corner and it hunkers down and rides as though it's on rails. While much of the credit goes to the all-wheel drive system, careful calibration of the spring and damper rates means there's virtually no body roll and a direct feel to the steering. Throw on large 225/50R17 tyres and it's difficult to get the Avant to come unglued. When it does, there's a top-notch electronic overseer waiting to right the wrong. The unspoken benefit is that this wagon is as comfortable in the ride department as it is tenacious through a series of sweeping corners. While I recognise there is a spot on the automotive landscape for the SUV, what I don't understand is why station wagons aren't more popular. This Audi A4 Avant, it's got capacity and flexibility, it's stylish, and it rides and drives like a true sports car. That is a combination that's very easy to like and very difficult to overlook.
Michelin, a better way forward.
With Formula One now racing on one brand of tire, the American Le Mans Series is one of the few that still encourages tire competition.
That's the way Michelin likes it. We're really not into spec series. We like to come out with our product and compete against the other companies. It's the way you learn it, and it's where you also find out where you are.
What Michelin does on the racetrack translates directly into the street. It's real, it's big time, and that's why it's on the most powerful production Corvette ever built by General Motors, the ZR1.
Porsche's in two classes. We're in the LMP2 class, which are the prototypes, and the 911s are in the GT2 class, which are the production-based models. And the tires play, obviously, it's the only contact the car has with the ground. Doesn't matter how much horsepower you have, if you don't have your suspension set up and your tires set up right, you're not going to go anywhere. The advantage of having competition, of course, is that your guy wants to be the best. And so there's more research and more technology, laboratory work going on. And so the tires are always cutting edge. And we like this competition. It allows us to build the best car we can and go out and beat the other guy's best car.
My background is replacement tires, so making the jump to motorsports, one of the key things you'll learn is Michelin races to learn first and then to win. Eventually, all of that data that we learn, whether it's on track, endurance, wear of the tire, comes down to the consumer product.
My street cars run on Michelin, our trucks run on Michelin, and we want to win. You know, if there was a better tire out there, that's what we'd be on.
Make sure you check out motoringtv.com along with catching programs you may have missed on TSN. We have now posted our nominees for top vehicles of 2009. We want you to vote, and we'll have your results and our results on the upcoming 1-hour Car of the Year special. All the details are at motoringtv.com.
We're going to show how the vehicle slowdown system works. Essentially, when we see the taillights flash on the Impala, that will allow us to visually see that that is the vehicle that we have identified, and that will be the first step of the process. Through that, someone would contact the OnStar people and essentially take away any acceleration from the vehicle whatsoever.
Go put the cuffs on him.
You know, that early Challenger, when it came to engine selection, you had a slant 6 and 8 variations on the V8. Now the new one, of course, the big news is the SRT8, the 6.1 liter Hemi with a 6-speed transmission, the same one found in the Viper. But you know, our man in the Quaker State Garage, Bill Gardner, he loves horsepower, but he thinks these days with high gas prices, maybe engines are getting too big. So how about it, Bill? Does that include the Hemi?
Hey Brad, it's a muscle car, right? So you gotta have some muscle under the hood. In my language, that's spelled V8. Now 6.1 liters is a pretty big V8. Maybe that's a little bit excessive, but you know what? That car's available with a 3.5 V6 as well. So, you know, if you object to the V8 fuel economy, you can get a real great V6. It'll perform just fine in that car as well. Anyhow, this week I want to talk about brake servicing, something that you have to do on a periodic basis on your vehicle. The vehicle that we've got here today is an 06 Hyundai Sonata. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the brake system on this car. We're just using it as a reference point. We've had a quick look at the brakes, and this is something that you want to do periodically, usually every 15 to 20,000 K, which coincides usually with your tire rotation periods. Could also coincide with the time of the year that you either put on your winter tires or the springtime when you remove them, the wheels are off, take a quick peek at the brakes. If there's nothing wrong with them, you maybe do a minor servicing, maybe it's just a visual inspection and move on. This Hyundai Sonata, like so many other cars on the road today, uses a single piston caliper that floats on a set of sliders, allowing the caliper to apply even pressure to the inboard and the outboard pads, a bracket that straddles the rotor to cradle those pads, and this hardware is very similar on many of today's cars, front and rear. Here's a similar component from a 92 Infiniti G20. You can see the similarity in this caliper bracket, and the problems that afflict these vehicles are very, very common. For example, on the Infiniti, we had one slider per wheel that was nice and free, lubricated, and moving the way it should. You can see the boot is intact. Over here, this one is completely locked with rust. The boot was not installed properly. The guide pin completely rusted out, and the bore down in here where the pin goes just jammed with rust to the point where this one wouldn't move. The pad wore to a bit of a taper. There was noise and a low brake pedal every time the brake was applied. In terms of frequency of when you should service your brakes, if you're operating predominantly on asphalt, you can pretty much go for the life of the brake pads and then do a comprehensive brake service when you're replacing the pads, and that'll be sufficient. However, if your car is operated on gravel roads, if you're spending a lot of time going to the cottage, or you're operating in soupy, sloppy conditions on secondary roads, servicing the brakes at least once a year is prudent. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2009.
We have a little treat to show you this week. Now this thing is a Suzuki SX4, but it's very different because instead of a gasoline engine, this thing actually has a 1.6 litre common rail turbo diesel engine. Now this thing puts out 89 horsepower, not very much. However, the 158 pound-feet of torque it churns out at 1750 RPM is superb. It's enough to get it up to 100k in about 12 seconds, and it'll do the 80 to 120 passing move in about 7 seconds. But that is not its forte. Its forte, quite simply, fuel economy. Now, I've driven this thing and I've been averaging 5.9 litres per 100 kilometres. If you drive it with an eye to fuel economy, I actually got it down to about 4.9 litres per 100 kilometres. Any way you cut it, that type of fuel efficiency is almost impossible to beat, even for a hybrid. At this point in time, Suzuki is only thinking of bringing this version of the SX4 to Canada. As far as I'm concerned, it's a no-brainer because it will sell. All-wheel drive, electronic stability control, and an engine that will run on the smell of an oily rag make it an irresistible car, especially if it's priced at under $25,000.
Closed captioning on Motoring 2009 is brought to you by the 2009 Chevrolet Traverse Crossover. It's everything you've ever wished for, and then some.
So I was filling up at the self-serve the other day, and it was like 92 cents a liter. And then I turned on the business news, and the Canadian dollar was like 78 cents US. I said, when did that happen? Is this 2005 all over again? Am I in a Bill Murray movie? Well, I do remember when the dollar was like $1.10 US. That was only a couple of weeks ago. And the letters and emails and phone calls I got from people complaining about how their car companies and their dealers were ripping them off, all this extra money they were paying because they had to live in Canada, buying cars in the States. Well, I'm not hearing from those folks so much anymore, and I can only assume it's because they're too busy going back down to the dealership now and giving back the $10,000 they've just made on the value of their car. That is where they are, isn't it? And as far as the price of gas is concerned, well, yeah, it is pretty amazing that it's dropped from like $1.35 to 90 cents in a couple of weeks. God knows again where that number is going to be by the time you see this. The fact is, folks, we can't control the price of our cars or the price of gasoline. You can complain all you want about your local dealership or your local gas station. You can complain all you want about your provincial government or even the federal government. There's nothing they can do. These things are governed by market forces that are much bigger than we are. So there is no point in complaining. Only thing you can do is change your behavior. If you're concerned about the price of gasoline might be going up again, buy a car that gets better fuel consumption or drive less. If you can't afford a car because the Canadian dollar is too high, don't buy a new car. I just wish we'd all accept the realities of this world and stop our whining. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Few final thoughts on the new Dodge Challenger. What is there not to like? Great looking vehicle, great to drive whether you're picking up the groceries or at the racetrack. And I can't believe we're getting so excited about a vehicle that was introduced almost 40 years ago. And you know, Chrysler, General Motors, and Ford, they've been taking their licks over the years, and for good reason. And I know gas prices are going up, people are moving to smaller cars. That's a good thing, but I'm not going to hide my excitement about the fact that the boys and girls are still producing some good old American muscle like the Dodge Challenger, which just happens to be made in Canada. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
When they first brought the Mazda 6 out, it really didn't compete against its mainstay competition, which would have been the Altima, the Camry, and the Honda Accord, primarily because it was too small, and especially in the rear seat. It was too cramped to be a real family sedan.
It's the second biggest segment out there in Canada. I mean, this is an enormous segment, and we've struggled in it ever since the 626 and then the first generation Mazda 6. We've struggled against really tough competition, the Accords and the Camrys and the Altimas that are out there. And I believe this is going to be our first chance to go out there with a real contender and put up a great fight.
Motoring 2009 on TSN has been brought to you by the new Q Horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.